Hey everybody, thank you for joining us on the FareCompare weekly video podcast, number 14. I guess that's a lucky number for me, at least. Daughter just turning 14 years old. So anyway, I want to thank everybody for watching the podcast today, and we're going to talk about a couple different things. One of our sort of oldies but goodies. We're going to drag in some bag fees and how to gamble with some of those things. We're going to talk a bit about how to fix a variety of travel problems, and we'll also sort of end up talking about giving the gift of travel. One of the things that I really like to do in some cases is give the gift of travel, and I'm sure you will too, instead of that iPad that you might be sending or that iPhone that you're buying or whatever. And then we'll take a couple questions from some customers, which Ann will help me out with. So let me introduce Ann McDermott. She's our editor at the site at FareCompare.com, and she's going to be helping me with the video podcast today as we talk about a few of these topics.
I love the questions from the customers, the fans of FareCompare.
I actually like
always.
It's one of the favorite
genius.
parts. Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts too, because I wish my website could actually answer every question that you typed into Google, but we've got some ones that are more complicated sometimes. So we're gonna definitely do that as well.
Well, this first topic of a bunch of common air travel problems is, I think it will answer a lot of people's questions that might be interested in writing in. I can assure you every single one of these has happened to me or to someone very near and dear. So
yes, well, let's take number one is, what if you lose your phone? In my case, what if you forget your tablet, which I recently did on American Airlines flight. And so I was basically, and it's the first time I've actually left something on an aircraft, and I tried to call a few different numbers, and on American they actually sent me an email. I don't know how they actually broke into my tablet, because they had the my daughter actually has on my Apple contacts, my name is Papa Cini, right? And I was wondering why they sent an email to Papa Cini. So clearly they had cracked into my iPad and figured out whose it was, and sent me a note from a company that said, as long as you pay a fee and the shipping cost, they'll ship it back to me. And of course I did do that. Now that was an interesting thing. They didn't just try to send it to me, and but they wanted me to actually pay a fee for it. But I was happy to do that, because the tablet was worth several $100s, and the fee was, I don't know, $20 or $30 to get it back.
Well, I think the main thing is, if you lose something, try your hardest to figure out where you lost it. And if you're still in the airport, I'd say the first place you should check is go back to the security checkpoint, because people leave all kinds of stuff there. Security checkpoints have hundreds and hundreds of phones and tablets and electronic devices, and they don't want to keep them necessarily. And they've got warehouses.
We end up in Alabama, actually, when it's all said and done.
In the article that we've written for this, we can link you to a page that has all the TSA lost and founds for various airports. But you can also, contact the airport lost and found, the airline lost and found. They all have separate places, and it would behoove you to get in touch with them immediately.
Yeah, the other thing, Ann, that I thought was that was something that I thought of once I got there. I went, oh my gosh, because not only that, it had my charger inside the little carrying case. So I lost my tablet and my charger, and of course I didn't forget my phone, but I had no way to charge my phone. So from when I actually figured out that I had forgotten it, which of course I was at the hotel at that point, I actually ordered a new cable for like $9 off Amazon. It was delivered the next day, so I could at least charge my phone. So one of the things you could do is, if you don't have a charging cable or whatnot, hit on Amazon and then get the next day delivery option if you're a Prime member.
Now, another big travel problem, of course, is if your flight is canceled or delayed.
Right.
And you always tell people that the number one thing is to get in touch with the airline.
Yeah, no, look, here's the thing is, first of all, you want to know as quickly as possible that your flight's been canceled or delayed. The only way to know that is to sign up for their flight status alert. So that's number one. And by the way, it's not only you, it's always a good thing to also sign up for that stuff for whoever's picking you up at the other end, if it's not Uber or something like that. And once you have that information, you want to be first in line of the, well, let's assume it's a 737, the 135 people that are on the plane that are all getting that information at some point, right? Some of them are getting it from the gate agent. You want it to be on your phone, and you want to have that ready to go. And sometimes that means calling on the phone, but if it's busy, sometimes that means going outside of security to find somebody. Sometimes that may be sneaking into the VIP club or whatever it takes. But you need to really, you have to contact a human, because you cannot change your reservations that I'm aware, at least on the 4 major airlines, easily online.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And getting on Twitter, airlines, as you have pointed out time and time again, airlines respond to Twitter. Yeah. They've got people following that, and they pay attention because they don't want, I guess, presumably they don't want you saying, I think this airline sucks. So.
Yeah, it's brand management, right? So clearly that's something they're aware of. So, putting a note out on Twitter or on their Facebook page or whatnot, they can at least point you in the right direction. For example, in some cases we've seen them, waive certain things. But in general, it's about knowing quickly and getting a human on the phone whenever you're delayed or canceled. And by the way, Ann, just like we noted the last 4 or 5 years over the holiday period, at least Thanksgiving last week, a 15 or 16% delay in cancellation rate. So 1 in approximately 5 people actually being delayed or canceled. This happens a lot.
Yeah. Okay, now if your bag is lost or damaged, I once made a huge mistake. My bag was damaged, but I didn't notice it until I got home and started unpacking. And by then it was too late because I hadn't notified the airline, and they said, well, you might have damaged it on the way home or whatever. I can understand that, but I lost out.
Yeah, you definitely want to do it while you're there. And by the way, I had a golf bag that got completely demolished. I think they actually tied a rope to it and dragged it through the Atlantic Ocean all the way back to the United States. But actually didn't really realize until my friend was helping me pick up the bag, and he had a huge grease spot all over his shirt because they evidently had got stuck in some of the gearing of the belts that were running to pull up baggage and whatnot. So it was a huge hassle. But you have to do it when you're there. It's kind of a hassle, especially if it's in a busy period of time. If it's even worse if it's international, because you're having to clear customs with a damaged bag to find it to something. So you got to do it at the airport. It's a hassle. It's going to take you 90 minutes to a couple hours, but you're just going to have to gut it up and deal with it.
And if your bag is lost, of course, in both cases, you make a report. That's the number one thing to do. And then I guess you sit back and pray. I don't know.
Yeah, I ended up, getting a voucher, and they ordered me a new, golf bag cover, and so, when it was all said and done, it was okay, but it was certainly a huge hassle, not exactly what it would have expected. I think the other thing that we should mention too is, it's not unusual for people to have their ID lost or stolen or left at home. I actually it turns out I lost my passport. I found it actually 2 years later in a place that I would have never expected, in a bag that I hardly ever use. It was in a side pocket. So I actually had to go through the process of saying that it was misplaced or stolen or whatnot. So you have to go through the Department of State and deal with that particular issue. A lot of folks, and including me, take pictures of all of our ID and upload them into the cloud, right? I actually learned this tip from a flight attendant, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. They forget their IDs, lose them all the time, evidently, and so they take pictures of that stuff, put it up in the cloud, so you have access to it, so you can show people. At least it expedites the process of dealing with that.
One more thing to do is, as long as you're taking pictures of your ID, take a picture of your bag, because in case it gets lost, how many of us can really describe our bag? But if you have a picture, it makes
there's 2 things. Take a picture of that bag and then throw a business card inside the bag. Sometimes the outer whatever markings you have on it, or whether or not it has your name or not, gets ripped off the bag and damaged or whatever. So throw a card inside it because they are going to go through the contents.
One last travel problem is, if a seatmate or somebody in your row is driving you crazy, or reclining into your lap, or hugging the armrest, or maybe you're the one doing that. If there's, I always say, ask politely, like, gosh, could you please, pick up your seat so you aren't in my lap? But if that doesn't work, don't take matters into your own hands.
Yes, we've seen people quickly get ejected from airlines, and you definitely don't want to be rerouted in flight. In fact, I think in some cases they're trying to pin that on some folks and make them pay for that change that occurred. So yeah, you definitely want to get the flight attendant involved. It's one thing to have somebody that's sort of super chatty. I just had that. Unfortunately, on the way back from my trip over Thanksgiving, my wife and daughter and I ended up on 3 separate rows because when we bought the tickets several months earlier, there wasn't any across, right? And so, instantly, the person sitting next to me definitely wanted to know my entire life history. And the Bose headset popped on pretty quickly, and we were off to the races listening to an audiobook in this particular case. So if somebody's driving you crazy because of they're just pestering you, just so you can tune them out. If they're driving you crazy by what they're doing, or somebody's in front of you, somebody's being an armrest hog or whatever it is, don't deal with them directly. Let the flight attendant just say, hey, is there any other seat that I can move to in the plane? Would you mind, I'm going to head to the restroom in a bit. Could you chat with them or whatever?
Good idea. Now let's segue into baggage fees, and there are.
That's a quick segue into baggage fees, right?
You don't have to pay them.
Yeah, you know what? This is one of the 2 fees that you and I have talked about a lot, which are the ones that I think, well, at least they're optional. At least the bag fee is optional. The change fee, if you have to change, it's optional only because of the sense you have to change it. But that's, billions and billions of dollars in revenue to the airlines. And I thought this was interesting too. Is I actually see a lot of people that just check their bag and don't mind paying the fee at all. And every time I see somebody doing that at the airport, I'm like, why are you doing that? There's so many ways to get out of it.
Yeah, and the number one way is the simplest, and it's a great way for so many reasons, and that's to use the carry-on.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, it's pretty amazing to watch. We were laughing. We were coming out of immigration and customs. We were coming back from Puerto Vallarta for our trip this past week. There was a family of about 5 that had 14 bags. I don't know where they were. I hope they were somewhere for 3 months.
Wow.
But we were like, how the heck can you take that much stuff with you, on a trip?
Well, forget that. How the heck can you afford it?
Really, I mean, once you get past some of these second and third check bag fees, some people, I guess if you were to land at a place, stay for 3 weeks, and you're not going anywhere, but if you have to travel anywhere, you plan on going anywhere interesting, switching hotels or whatnot, this is crazy. And in that case, there's ways to even avoid some of the fees with that too, if you really are a heavy packer. But certainly, carry-on, except on a few airlines, we need to mention that some airlines do charge for carry-ons, Spirit and Frontier and Allegiant here in the U.S., but many of them, the low-cost airlines in Europe, do it as well.
And even those, the discounters, they do allow you a really small bag.
Sure, a backpack
if it fits
or something.
Under the seat. And, say you're going for a weekend, or you're just going to like a beachy type of place, something real simple. You can do that. It'll work for you if you're just creative and don't need to pack a tuxedo or something.
I think the biggest problem is shoes, to be honest. Yeah. It's like, hey, I got the flip-flops. If I want to go out to dinner once, I need at least a pair of loafers. And then how about my tennis shoes if I want to go walking, right? So even for me, I hate that. Like, I wish there was like, I want a transformer shoe that becomes a flip flop, then a loafer, and then a tennis shoe.
Transformer shoe.
If somebody could build that, I'm ready. I'm heading Kickstarter. Somebody put that on Kickstarter. I'm ready to pack that.
Well, I assume you wear your heaviest, biggest, clunkiest shoes, right?
On the actual day, the trip travel. Sometimes it's a tennis shoe, sometimes it's a loafer. Certainly, the flip flops are easier to store in the bag. But I think the other thing too is that I think what we're going to see over the next 2 or 3 years is a lot of RFID tags on things, your bag not getting lost, airlines actually better guaranteeing whether your bag gets in. But at the moment, there's no guarantee that it won't get lost. Paying the fee isn't refunded if your bag's lost, right?
Yeah.
You're betting your stuff won't get lost. And if you look at the rates of what they call mishandled baggage, it's not very high, but I'll tell you what, I mean, I've had the few times that I've checked, and the only time I really check is golf clubs, twice I've had issues. It happens. And not necessarily lost, but damaged as well.
And I always want to throw this out. If you lose a bag, and I don't travel that much, but I've lost plenty of bags until I switched to using a carry-on. But if you do lose a bag, if any toiletries you have to buy, any like minor items of clothing, we're talking about underwear, of course, just make sure you keep those receipts. If you don't have receipts, you won't get reimbursed for it.
Yeah, no, there's definitely, and in many cases they want you to buy the product through them now, where they actually buy the product and ship it to you. So you not only if they do say go ahead and buy some stuff, keep the receipts, but also be aware that many times they're going to want to actually send you, especially in the case of bigger items. And hey, look, I mean, the thing about it too is that if you are one of these heavy packers, 50 pounds is that magic number where overweight fees kick in. So be aware of that. In some cases, it's 40 pounds, depending on the airline in Europe. And you also have to be really good at converting from pounds to kilograms as well once you get over to Europe, so be aware of that. So get your calculator out for that. And also, oversized bag in many cases will be also dinged an additional fee as well.
And I think people should understand that the overweight charges and the oversized charges, all these are added separately. Like, say you have a checked bag that's too big and too heavy. You pay the checked bag fee. Then you pay the overweight fee.
And if it's too big, you pay the overage fee.
The oversized and overweight fees make the regular standard bag fee charge pale in comparison. You will pay tons of money for that other stuff.
Yeah, you'll pay more than your ticket probably, unless you're going to Europe. So so just be careful with all that. And we'll talk more about bag fees. I think we're going to see a huge change over the next 18 months in the way check bags are done, and you'll be able to track it like you do FedEx packages and whatnot. I'm positive we'll see that in some bigger airports in the next 18 months or so.
Well, I was going to say, now that you know how to pack, let's talk about the actual travel. And because we're coming to the holiday season, how about a gift of travel?
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, outside of the holidays, which now we're coming into the Christmas and New Year holidays, and you have also President's Day weekend in mid-February, prices are really good. I did a bunch of radio shows from several cities this morning. I was researching some of the pricing out of the cities in January and early February and even into late February. The prices are really, really cheap. And this is the January deal zone that's cooking in the last 3 weeks in January. And to be honest, for the price of an iPad, you could send somebody, across country. You could send them down to Florida for a 4-day cruise, 2 people. Giving the gift of travel is definitely something that you want to do, especially during the January deal zone where you could actually get it even cheaper.
I was dying. I just bought this a Christmas time period ticket, and I saw in January it was less than a quarter of what I paid for it. What are you going to do?
Yeah, the thing is that when you're buying somebody travel, it's buying them the tickets explicitly is probably not a good idea because they may have to change their dates or whatnot unless you've really negotiated that. Gifting your miles, you don't want to pay to transfer the miles, you just want to write them the ticket out of your account. Better to get them sort of a gift card on the airline so they can do the final booking as well. So just be aware of that if once somebody gets their name stamped on a ticket, it's for them for their lifetime, and if they need to change it, there's all these hefty penalties and change fees on most airlines.
What I'd do is get the gift of travel for somebody that I knew well enough that I could talk about it ahead of time and say, listen, I'll go with you at this price. We'll have a great little vacation. But when can you go? We talk about the January deal zone. When is it?
Right, exactly. And so if you have that all negotiated up, it's a perfect thing to do. And to I'll be honest with you, the gift of travel for me, because we travel so much in our particular family, because we love to travel, it's the Facebook postings and pictures. It's the Twitter feeds and the pictures. I saw my daughter, posting to and doing the Snapchat stories and all the other parts, right? That's the fun part of, showing, and going through the process. So many cool ways to document and then go back and review it historically. I was actually looking through the camera roll on my camera, in the past 5 or 6 trips. The gift of travel is very special.
So the January deal zone starts about the first week in January?
Yeah, it's right after you have, in this particular case, New Year's Day lands on a Friday. It would start that Monday following January because it's a little more expensive to come back on that Monday. So that first Tuesday in January is really when the deals start getting better. So you're looking at about January 4th or 5th. So the last 3 weeks generally is when you see the deal zone. Now you'll see cheaper prices to places like Mexican beach resort areas, Caribbean beach resort areas, if that's what you want to do. You also see cheaper prices to skiing destinations. You'll see those big, huge, nonstop prices to places like Utah, Colorado, California, and to some of those places where skiing's done, Montana, some of the other places. And if you're heading into those particular areas, the prices drop dramatically right during that last 3 weeks.
And then it sort of comes up again, what, Valentine's Day, spring break?
Yeah, basically it goes, the zone actually starts in January. It goes through February, not including President's Day weekend, which is a pretty popular weekend to travel, all the way up until pretty much spring break starts for many school districts, typically starting in the second week in March particularly. So you may even slide in the first week in March, for example, depending on which airline has which deals. But once you hit spring break time frame for different school districts, the prices jump up dramatically.
All right. Are you ready to take some questions?
Yeah, sure. It sounds like we have one from Dallas, I see on my note here.
Yes, you do. This is from David in Dallas. And it's a little complicated, but he seems to be a big flyer. He's a gold member of American Airlines, and he says he saw you on TV in Dallas, and he has a few questions regarding their new points program, which has changed. Like some of the others, they're all changing.
Yeah, no, American's going, I think in mid-March, I think March 20th or something like that, to the new program. Well, at least the new award chart, which means they've made it more expensive for some awards and a little bit cheaper for others.
Well, he's saying that each year he accrues about 300,000 American points each year through his a Citibank card.
Wow.
And he's trying to figure out if the new point system will be better for him or not. He says, all points I collect are for dollars spent, not by air miles, like many travelers have used. He says, mine are always dollar to dollar, but how does this affect bookings going forward? And he asks, will most round-trip domestic tickets change from 25,000 points? And then
they didn't. Okay, so let's walk David through it a little bit.
Okay.
So the answer is, if you're accumulating your miles through your credit card and not through the actual flying, you're probably it's sort of a wash for you. in this particular case. Because really where you get hurt is if you're a flyer that flies 100,000 miles a year, even if you're, the maximum elite status on American, which is executive platinum, you still barely get what you got before in your flying points with bonus. In fact, you get less than your total bonus points than you got before. So your earning power for actually sitting in a seat is a lot less under the new system. Now, that being said, the miles that you accumulate on your credit card, right, is dollar for dollar. So that's really about the award chart. So some of the things like Central America, the Caribbean, Mexico are actually a little bit cheaper on the award chart. So if you're going there, if you're doing business class or first class travel, you're going to get hammered, right, on the miles because those awards are going up dramatically. So it just depends on where you're actually heading. Now, that means you might want to do some of your redemptions before March if you're planning on doing the ones where the award chart's going up, right? You can book your ticket up to 11 months in advance, so you might want to do that on the award chart before then, especially if you're not. But you would want to wait till after they do the new award chart if you're going to go to Mexico or Central America and nothing really changes that much domestic. The only thing that really was interesting that they changed domestically is if your flight's under 90 minutes, then there's a much cheaper way to redeem that. So if you're going to Houston out of Dallas, for example, or San Antonio or Austin, you would want to redeem your points. So basically, it's a little bit of a wash. You're going to get stuck if you like to fly over oceans. You're probably going to get it a little bit cheaper if you like to fly. And Hawaii is going to be a little more expensive, for example. Alaska being a little bit more expensive as well. So in general, they devalued the points for earning if you actually sit in a seat, which seems a little bit odd because those are your most. It's more like if I spent more on my ticket, even though I don't do as much flying or fly as far as some of the other folks do, and it effectively sort of kills the mileage run where people were trying to buy the cheapest ticket to get the most amount of miles and points.
He specifically mentions Hawaii. I just want to bring this up for a sec. He says, I go to Maui each year, and first class anytime is now like about 135,000, 150,000 points a ticket, and he's wondering if that's going to change.
The anytime rates, which are basically the ones where you're not capacity controlled, didn't change that much, but the ones where you pay about half the number of points, those changed in the case of Hawaii. So if he's already doing anytime rates, they did go up slightly, but not that dramatically. So again, it's a devaluation of the earning power, and also it's also making it harder to get that. So here's the thing about it is that because he has so many points, he probably benefits as well because fewer people can redeem now because their earning power. This is not next year, but in the following and subsequent years, 2017, 2018, it'll be much harder to actually earn enough points to get a trip, so there'll be more trips in the cheaper category for them.
David, I hope that helps. And for anybody else who has questions about American's program, Rick did write a pretty good, basic what's changing piece on our site. So check out the FareCompare Travel News blog. And our next question is from Tommy in St. Louis. Okay, so Tommy's
one of my favorite cities, by the way.
He's in St. Louis, and he says he's going to L.A. for work and then driving to Phoenix to visit a relative. And he says, my flight from St. Louis to L.A. connects in Phoenix on the way there and the way back. All right, you got that. He says, is there a way I can skip the L.A. to Phoenix leg and jump on the second leg back to St. Louis? What do you say, Rick?
On the way back. All right, so look, here's what happens. If you miss any leg on a trip, and you don't call the airline, they're going to cancel the rest of your trip automatically. And not only that, it's not just a penalty, you lose the entire value of your ticket. So you have to call no matter what. Now, in this particular case, I guess he gets back on the way back to Phoenix by driving to Phoenix or taking a bus or some sort of transportation by skipping that particular leg. If you call American or United or Delta or Southwest, they're gonna say, and you say I'm gonna miss that leg, they're going to actually cancel the rest of your ticket, and then you would have to rebuy that leg back, right? So there's no way not to take that leg. As soon as you don't show up for that flight, it's automatically canceled.
And if you happen to be traveling with checked baggage, they're not going to put your baggage off on this stop just to help you out.
I'm not sure. Is he actually want to? He just wants to skip the third leg of a 4-leg trip, right?
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
So he basically has a connecting to LA and a connecting back, but he wants to skip it, which means somehow he has to make his way from LA to Phoenix. That's not via the flight.
I have seen this written up on a bunch of tips on like how to save a lot of money on a connecting flight, or they tell you instead of going from you've got point A and you're ultimately going to C, but you have a stopover at B. And a regular ticket, A to B, is really expensive, and actually the A to C ticket is much cheaper. So they figure, I'll just buy the cheaper one and get off where I need to get off. But airlines are, they know people do that, and they basically state in those contracts of carriage that that's illegal.
Yeah, that's what you're talking about is what they call a hidden city, where basically you're buying a ticket to a different city that happens to connect and one that happens to be cheaper than the ticket for the place you actually intended to go. People. There's even there was court cases around this. There was a company that was sort of promoting hidden city and some of these other techniques. And to be honest, a lot of people do that for airlines that they don't have any loyalty with. But for example, if you have an airline and you have a loyalty account, they can actually kill your loyalty account and all your points inside of it if they catch you doing something like that. If you're a hobbyist when it comes to travel, you're going to know what back-to-back ticketing is and hidden city ticketing, and some of these other things that sort of get around what the intention of the airline was to sell the ticket, right? And so you have to be really careful if you're going to do that kind of stuff. Travel agents, of which I'm in that community, aren't allowed to help you book those kind of tickets. Certainly I'm talking about it. It's not like it's common knowledge. If you type those terms into Google, you'll see all sorts of articles talking about these particular types of things. But in this particular case, I'm not sure exactly why they would skip the third leg, but immediately upon the fact that they didn't get on the flight on the third leg, they didn't call to say that they weren't going to make it and rebook the rest of the trip, which, depending on what kind of ticket they had, there's going to be a change fee involved and likely a difference in cost as well. There's no really good way to get around that, to be honest.
Yeah, so you don't recommend it?
No, absolutely not. I think I've seen this happen a lot, right? Not just because people want to skip a city. They didn't make it to the airport in time and they missed their flight. They didn't call, right? And now the rest of their entire trip's been canceled, and now they lose the entire value of their ticket instead of just the penalty, because when you did call, they would say, well, how do you want to rebook it? We're going to take whatever the change fee is, depending on what airline it is. Could be up to $300 or $400 if it's international, $200 if it's domestic, for example. So you have to basically let the airline know before the plane takes off.
I guess if you want to try to game the system, you could be hit with a slew of big penalties.
Yeah, I'm not sure how this one would particularly game the system. It's almost like the person bought the ticket, decided they wanted to drive to Phoenix somehow and not take that flight, and they were hoping not to have to change their ticket and incur the change fee and all and the difference in value of whatever the new ticket would have been, right? So that's what this particular case sounds like. It's not exactly a quote-unquote hidden city. It's more like I'm changing my mind, and I don't want to pay the change fee. And it's very difficult to do. Now, if you were on Southwest Airlines, there is no change fee, right? So if this ticket happened to be on Southwest Airlines with that connection, you wouldn't have the change fee. You'd only have the difference in cost by rebooking that Phoenix to St. Louis fourth leg, which actually may not be that much different because they do specialize in one-way fares.
Interesting. Tommy, let us know what airline you're flying so we can.
Yeah, if it's on the other legacy airlines, it'd be a $200 change fee, which likely eats up the entire value. So he'd just be basically buying a new one-way ticket from Phoenix to back to St. Louis.
Well, I hope that helps, Tommy.
Sorry, Tommy. I know it sounds interesting to do, but if you try it, guarantee you, while the wheels are only lifting off, your ticket's about to be canceled.
Well, if you want more information on this or any of our topics, please, come to the site, Google us, Google FareCompare advice, look for whatever topic you like.
Yeah.
I bet you anything Rick has written about it.
Yeah, I've been doing this a long time, and you can also certainly catch the video podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, other platforms. So be sure and catch us there. And also, as I mentioned in episode 13 and 12 and 11, we need you to get to download that Adventurous app. It's getting better as we are starting to make updates to it. So check out the Adventurous app on the App Store, both Android and iTunes Store. iOS app stores as well. So. Or just type in FareCompare.com/app and we'll actually take you there.
It really is cool. Really is.
I love it. I actually look at it. Whenever I need 4 or 5 minutes to kill, I'm off to there to see what new content's been added.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks.